Darkness. It clung to Kale like a second skin, thick and suffocating. The dungeon stank of damp stone mold and the sour stench of despair. Chains rattled every time he so much as twitched, biting into his raw wrists. He was cold, starving, and covered in bruises, but none of that compared to the void inside him. Umbra was gone. Not dead, far worse. Stolen, twisted, turned against him. The moment the bond between them had been severed, it had felt like a blade slicing through his soul, leaving nothing but hollow emptiness behind. He could still feel it, the echo of something that had been a part of him, but now it was distant, unreachable. His dragon, his friend, had been ripped away, corrupted by Dne's dark magic, and now he was alone. Kale clenched his jaw, staring at the damp ceiling, his mind a whirlwind of rage, grief, and a sliver of something dangerous. Vengeance. He didn't know how, and he didn't know when, but he swore on every breath left in his body that he would get Umbra back. And when he did, he would tear down everything Prince Dne had built. A soft, shuffling sound broke through his haze of anger. The cell door creaked open, and a pair of footsteps echoed against the stone. Kale forced himself to sit up, his muscles screaming in protest. A torch flared to life, casting flickering shadows against the walls, and he squinted against the sudden brightness. Two figures stood before him. One was a guard, clad in blackened steel, his helmet concealing everything except the sneer curling his lips. The other? Lara. Kale's fingers curled into fists, the iron of his shackles biting into his skin. "You have a lot of nerve showing your face here," he said, his voice hoarse from days without water. She didn't flinch, but something in her eyes flickered. Guilt, maybe. It wasn't enough. "Kale," she began, but he let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "No, you don't get to say my name. Not after what you did." She hesitated, glancing at the guard, who merely scoffed and stepped back to give them space. Then she knelt in front of him, close enough that he could see the way her fingers trembled. "I had no choice," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Everyone always has a choice," Kale spat. "You chose to betray me. You chose to hand me over to him." She swallowed hard, her jaw tightening. "I didn't know he would break the bond." Kale's stomach twisted. The pain was still fresh, like a blade lodged in his ribs. "And that makes it better?" His voice was quieter now, but no less sharp. Lara exhaled, running a hand through her hair. "I was trying to save the kingdom." "The kingdom?" Kale laughed again, but this time it was hollow. "You think your brother's rule is worse than what you just did? Than what he took from me?" She flinched, and for a moment, she looked lost. Kale wanted to hate her. Gods, he should hate her. But something about the way she held herself, the exhaustion in her eyes, it made him pause. "Why are you here?" he asked, his voice quieter. Lara hesitated before speaking. "Because I made a mistake," Kale scoffed. "No, you made a choice." "I know," she whispered, then met his eyes. "And I'm here to fix it." Kale stilled. The guard shifted but said nothing. Lara leaned closer. "Dne's preparing for war," she murmured. "He's going to unleash Umbra against anyone who stands against him. He's already taken control of the remaining dragons in the royal keep, twisting them the same way he twisted yours. Soon, he'll have an unstoppable army." Kale's throat tightened. The thought of Umbra, his Umbra, being forced into battle under Dne's control made his stomach churn. He exhaled shakily. "And why do you care?" Lara hesitated. "Because I was wrong. Because I thought I could stop Dne from within, but I see it now. He's beyond reason. And I won't let him destroy everything." Kale studied her. There was no deception in her eyes, but he wasn't sure if he could trust himself to believe her. Even if I believed you, he said slowly, I'm chained in a dungeon. What do you expect me to do? She reached into her cloak and pulled out a key. Kale stared. The guard smirked. We don't have much time, he said, stepping forward. The alarms will sound if we don't move fast. Kale blinked. Wait, you're helping me? The man shrugged. Dne thinks he owns everything, including the people who serve him. He's wrong. Laura pressed the key into his hands, her expression urgent. I can't undo what I did, she said softly. But I can help you make it right. Kale hesitated only a moment longer before gripping the key tight. His fury still burned hot, but it was no longer directionless. He would get Umbra back. And when he did, there would be nothing left of Dne's empire but ash. The key felt cold in Kale's palm, its weight heavier than it should have been. His heart thundered against his ribs, his breath shallow as he turned it over in his fingers. He wanted to believe this was real. He wanted to believe that Laura and the guard, whoever he was, were truly here to free him. But after everything, trust was a dangerous thing. His hands trembled as he brought the key to the shackles. The metal was rusted, cruelly tight around his wrists, cutting into his skin. He slid the key into the lock. A soft click. The shackles fell away. The relief was instant. Kale flexed his stiff fingers, rubbing at the sore red rings the cuffs had left behind. He took a slow breath, then lifted his gaze to Laura. You're going to regret this, he said. She gave a ghost of a smile. Probably. The guard, still lingering near the door, scoffed. Enough talking. We need to move. Now. Kale wasn't going to argue. He forced himself to his feet, ignoring the ache in his body, and followed them out of the cell. The dungeon halls were narrow and damp, the flickering torches casting jagged shadows on the walls. It smelled of rot, mold, and something worse, something ancient. They moved in silence, their footsteps light. The guard led the way, navigating the labyrinthine corridors with ease. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and moved like a man who had spent his entire life dodging death. Kale studied him. Who are you? He asked, voice low. The man didn't glance back. Name's Varen. And why are you helping me? Varen snorted. Because Dne is a bastard. That's reason enough. Kale narrowed his eyes but said nothing. They didn't have time for deeper questions. Laura motioned for silence as they approached a staircase spiraling upward. Varen took the lead, pressing himself against the wall and peering around the corner. He tensed. Guards, he muttered. How many? Laura whispered. Varen's lips pressed into a thin line. Too many. Kale exhaled sharply. Of course it wouldn't be easy. The clinking of armor and muffled voices drifted down the staircase. They were talking, laughing, unaware. For now, Laura turned to Kale. How fast can you move? Kale rolled his shoulders. His body ached from days of captivity, but he was still him. He could run. Fast enough. She nodded, then turned to Varen. And you? Varen smirked. I'll keep up. Kale tensed. What's the plan? Laura exhaled. We can't fight them all. Not without weapons. We run. Straight through. It was reckless. It was insane. But they didn't have another option. Varen grinned. I like it. Laura counted down. 3, 2, 1. They ran. The moment their feet hit the stone steps, the guards turned. A shout of alarm rang through the chamber. Stop them! Kale was already moving. His instincts took over, his body surging forward. His legs burned, but he pushed harder, ducking low as an arrow whistled past his ear. Varen, despite his size, moved with the speed of a predator, slamming into the nearest guard and sending him crashing into the wall. Laura darted past them, moving like a shadow, a stolen dagger flashing in her grip as she drove it into the thigh of another soldier. Kale leapt over a fallen body, heart pounding. The top of the staircase was close, so close. Then, a figure stepped into his path. The soldier was massive, his armor gilded with the mark of the royal guard. He raised his sword in a blur of steel. Kale had no weapon, no time. But he didn't need time. The moment the soldier swung, Kale dropped into a slide, skimming across the cold stone floor beneath the man's reach. He twisted as he passed, grabbing a loose dagger from the soldier's belt and ripping it free. By the time the soldier turned, Kale was already moving again, blade in hand. They burst through the final doorway into a vast, open corridor. Torches lined the walls, illuminating towering stained glass windows that overlooked the castle courtyard. The night was dark, the moon hidden behind thick storm clouds, and the alarm was still ringing. Lara swore, "We need to get outside." Kale scanned the hall. Soldiers were closing in from both sides. They were trapped. No, they weren't. He turned to the nearest stained glass window. It was massive, easily 15 feet tall. On the other side, he could see the outer walls of the castle, the rooftops below. It was a fall, a deadly one. Unless, he clenched his jaw. "We go through," he said. Lara's eyes widened. "Through the window?" Baron barked a laugh. "I like him." There was no time to debate. The soldiers were closing in, weapons drawn. Kale tightened his grip on the dagger. Then he ran, straight at the window. The world slowed. The glass loomed before him, a massive expanse of colored shards depicting a dragon wreathed in flames. His heart thundered. And then he leapt. The impact shattered the night. Glass exploded around him in a cascade of light and color, a whirlwind of fractured reds and blues. He twisted in the air, shards slicing against his skin, and then he was falling. The wind howled. The ground rushed to meet him. Somewhere behind him, he heard Lara curse and Varen laughing as they plunged into the darkness. The rooftops raced closer. Kale braced himself and hit. The impact knocked the breath from his lungs. He rolled, skidding across the sloped roof, struggling for purchase. His fingers scraped against stone, catching the edge just before he could tumble off. His heart slammed against his ribs. Lara landed beside him, barely keeping her balance. Varen hit the roof hard, letting out a grunt but grinning as he pushed himself up. "Well," he panted, "that was fun." Kale glared at him. "You're insane." Varen grinned wider. "So are you." Lara cut in, scanning their surroundings. "We're not safe yet. We need to keep moving." Kale dragged in a breath, nodding. "Where?" Lara hesitated. "There's an old ruin in the east, hidden beyond the outskirts of the city. The rebellion is waiting there." Kale stiffened. "Rebellion?" She nodded. "Dne is growing stronger, but we're not the only ones fighting back." Something flickered in Kale's chest. A spark. Not hope. Something sharper. If there were others willing to stand against Dne, if there were others willing to fight, then maybe he wouldn't have to do this alone. He turned toward the distant horizon where the ruins lay hidden beneath the cover of darkness. His hands clenched into fists. "Then let's go." The night stretched before them, a vast expanse of darkness broken only by the distant glimmer of torchlight. The capital city of Eldor loomed behind them, its towering walls disappearing into the horizon as Kale, Lara, and Varen fled into the wilderness. The ruins lay to the east, hidden deep within the Valewood. A forest shrouded in mist and legend. The rebellion was waiting for them there. A last bastion of hope against the growing tyranny of Prince Dne. But Kale wasn't thinking about the rebellion. He was thinking about Umbra. The memory of his dragon's eyes, once burning with trust, now empty and cold, cut deeper than any blade ever could. He had to get him back. He would get him back, no matter what it took. The Valewood. By the time they reached the edge of the Valewood, the moon had long since vanished behind thick storm clouds. The trees stretched high, their twisted limbs clawing at the sky like skeletal fingers. A thick mist coiled through the undergrowth, swallowing sound and light alike. Kale pulled his cloak tighter around himself. "This place feels cursed," Baron grunted. "It probably is." Laura led the way, her steps sure despite the shifting fog. "The ruins are hidden deep inside. If we're lucky, we'll reach them before dawn." They moved in silence, the air thick with tension. Every rustling branch, every snapping twig felt like a threat lurking just beyond their vision. Then, a whisper. Not words, not quite, just a low, inhuman murmur carried on the wind. Kale froze, his skin prickled. "Did you hear that?" Baron nodded, unsheathing his dagger. "We're not alone." "We're not alone." Laura's eyes narrowed. "Keep moving." They pressed forward, their footsteps careful now. The mist thickened, swirling unnaturally, curling around Kale's legs like grasping hands. Then the whispers grew louder, and something moved. Dark shapes flickered through the fog, shifting at the edges of their vision. Not men, not human. Laura swore under her breath. Shades. Kale's blood turned to ice. Shades? Varen's grip tightened on his dagger. "They're drawn to magic, and something tells me this forest is full of it." The air trembled. Then, the shadows lunged. Kale barely had time to react before a formless mass of darkness tore through the mist, rushing toward them like a living nightmare. He dove to the side, rolling hard across the ground. Laura spun, steel flashing as she slashed at the nearest shade. The blade passed through it, doing nothing. The shade twisted, its hollow eyes locking onto her. Kale's breath caught. "Laura? Move." The shade struck. Laura barely managed to throw herself backward as the creature's tendrils lashed out, slicing through the air where she had stood moments before. Kale scrambled to his feet, his mind racing. Normal weapons wouldn't work. They weren't fighting something made of flesh and bone. They were fighting something else. And then, the fire. Deep in his chest, something stirred, a spark, a flicker of shadow flame. Kale's eyes widened. He hadn't felt it since Umbra had been taken, since the bond had been severed. But now the fire burned. The shade turned toward him, sensing the change. It lunged. Kale didn't think, he reacted. His fingers curled, and from the depths of his soul, the fire answered. A jet of black flame erupted from his palm, roaring through the air like a living storm. It struck the shade, and the creature let out a horrific shriek before it was obliterated. Silence. Then, Varen let out a low whistle. "Well, that's new." Kale stared at his hands, his breath unsteady. The fire flickered once, then faded. Laura looked at him, her eyes sharp. "You shouldn't be able to do that." Kale swallowed hard. He didn't know how or why, but the bond wasn't gone. Not completely. And that meant one thing. Umbra wasn't lost, not yet. The rebel stronghold. By the time they reached the ruins, dawn was breaking over the horizon, casting a pale golden glow over the crumbling stone. The fortress was ancient, built into the cliffs that overlooked the valley. Towers stood in ruin, walls cracked and overgrown, but the heart of the stronghold still held fast. And within it, people. Dozens of them, clad in makeshift armor, sharpening weapons, tending to the wounded. Some bore the scars of war, others the hardened expressions of those who had lost everything. This was the rebellion. Lara led them toward a massive fire pit at the center of the encampment. A man stood waiting for them, his arms crossed over his chest. He was older, his face lined with battle and grief. his dark eyes sharp as a hawk's. "General Thorn," Lara said, inclining her head. "We made it." Thorn studied them. "I see that." His gaze shifted to Kale, assessing. "So, you're the Shadowflame Rider." Kale tensed. "I was." Thorn's eyes narrowed. "No, you are." Kale frowned. "Umbra is still alive," Thorn interrupted. "And as long as he breathes, so does your bond." Kale's pulse quickened. He hadn't told them about the fire, about the spark that had reignited in the Valewood. Thorn turned to the gathered rebels, raising his voice. "Nay thinks he's already won. He thinks his armies, his dragons, are unstoppable." His gaze flickered to Kale. "But we have something he doesn't." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Kale's stomach twisted. He didn't like where this was going. "I'm not a symbol," he said flatly. Thorn smiled grimly. "No, you're something much more dangerous." Kale's hands curled into fists. He wasn't a leader. He wasn't some chosen one. But he was angry, and he wanted his dragon back. Thorn stepped forward, lowering his voice. "We have spies in the capital. They've sent word. Dne is planning something, a grand display of power." Kale's breath hitched. "What kind of display?" Thorn's expression darkened. "He's going to unleash the dragons." A cold weight settled in Kale's chest. The rebellion wanted to strike first, to cripple Dne before he could bring his armies to bear, and they wanted him to lead the charge. Kale exhaled, staring into the fire. The flames twisted, shifting, dark and flickering. The choice was already made. Dne had stolen his dragon. Now Kale was going to take him back. And when he did, he would burn the Empire to the ground. The sky burned red. Eldor's capital city, once a stronghold of power, stood on the precipice of destruction. Banners bearing the sigil of Prince Dne fluttered above its towering walls, illuminated by the glow of dragonfire. The rebellion had come. Kale stood at the edge of a war he never asked for, his cloak billowing in the howling wind, his fingers curling into fists. The gathered rebels waited behind him. Hardened fighters, robed mages, exiled warriors, all willing to lay down their lives to stop Dne's reign before it could truly begin. But none of them mattered. Not really. Kale only had one reason for being here. Umbra. His dragon was somewhere inside those walls, enslaved by Dne's magic, twisted into a weapon. Kale didn't care about prophecies, didn't care about the rebellion's plans for the future. He only cared about getting him back. And he would burn the entire city to the ground to do it. The battle begins. A horn blew in the distance, a deep, guttural sound that sent a shiver through the rebel ranks. Then, the gates opened, and the dragons were unleashed. The first came in a blur of gold and fire, its roar splitting the sky as it descended upon the battlefield. Soldiers poured from the city behind it, their armor gleaming in the dim light. The rebels surged forward, steel meeting steel in a clash of screams and chaos. Kale didn't wait. He ran. Not toward the battle, not toward the soldiers, toward the dragons. He could feel them. Not just see them, but feel them, like echoes of fire in the back of his mind. And then, like a knife to the ribs, he felt Umbra. The pain nearly knocked him off his feet. His dragon was close, and he was hurting. Kale's pulse thundered. His hands trembled with fury as he sprinted through the battlefield, cutting through the chaos like a shadow. Then, a roar split the heavens. Kale's heart stopped. There, on the highest balcony of the castle, stood Prince Dne, cloaked in regal black, his golden crown gleaming in the firelight. And beside him, Umbra. The dragon's obsidian scales shimmered, his massive wings spread wide. But his eyes, they were still empty, still wrong. Kale clenched his fists. "I'm coming, buddy," he whispered, and then he ran faster. storming the castle. The main gates were lost in the battle. But Kale wasn't looking for doors. He was looking for fire. He sprinted toward the nearest tower, where one of Dne's dragons had just landed. A beast of crimson and gold, its rider perched atop it like a god of war. Kale didn't stop. The rider barely had time to react before Kale leapt, grabbing onto the dragon's saddle and yanking the man backward. They tumbled from the beast, hitting the stone with a sickening crunch. Kale didn't look back. He seized the reins and pulled hard. The dragon beneath him roared, thrashing, but Kale didn't let go. "You're gonna fly me up there," he snarled, "or I'll burn you myself." The dragon hesitated, just for a moment. Then, with a powerful beat of its wings, it launched into the sky. Wind screamed against Kale's face as they soared toward the castle balcony. Dne was still standing there, watching the battle unfold, watching Kale approach, waiting. Kale gritted his teeth. The moment the dragon reached the balcony, he jumped, rolling hard across the stone. His stolen mount veered off, screeching into the sky, and then silence. Dne turned to face him. A slow, cruel smile spread across his lips. "So," he murmured, "you claim." Kale barely heard him. His eyes were on Umbra. The dragon stood like a statue, his massive body rippling with power, his tail curling and uncurling. The magic binding him was strong. Kale could feel it, pulsing like iron shackles around their severed bond. But beneath it, Umbra was still there. Kale took a step forward. "Umbra." The dragon didn't move. Dne chuckled. "Do you really think it's that simple?" he mused. "You're nothing but a street rat who stumbled into something greater than himself. This dragon was never yours." Kale's hands burned. Literally. Dark flames flickered at his fingertips, his shadow flames surging to life. His bond with Umbra wasn't gone, it was buried, and he was going to bring it back. Dne tilted his head. "Oh?" He raised his hand, the runes across his palm glowing. "Let's see who he really belongs to." He snapped his fingers, and Umbra attacked. The rider's wrath. The dragon struck like a thunderbolt, his massive claws slashing through the air as he lunged at Kale. Kale barely dodged, rolling across the stone as Umbra's tail shattered the balcony wall. He gasped for breath, staring at his dragon, at the rage in his once trusting eyes. "This isn't you." He clenched his fists. "You're stronger than this," he growled. Dne only laughed. "He's mine now." Kale met Umbra's gaze. Then he reached for the fire. Not his magic, not the shadow flame, but the bond, the thing that had never truly broken. It hurt. Gods, it hurt. His mind burned with the weight of it, as if something inside him was shattering and reforging all at once. But he pushed harder. "You're mine, Umbra," he whispered, "and I'm yours." The magic around the dragon wavered. Dne's eyes widened. "What?" Then Umbra roared. The fire hit like a storm. Black flames erupted from the dragon's maw, swallowing the entire balcony in a vortex of shadow and heat. Kale barely had time to brace himself before the flames rushed toward him. But they didn't burn. They embraced. The magic shattered, and suddenly he could feel it again. The bond, the fire, the connection. Kale gasped, falling to his knees as it crashed through him like a tidal wave. And when he looked up, Umbra was standing before him. His eyes were no longer empty, no longer wrong. They burned, deep and crimson, filled with the same unshakable trust Kale remembered. Dne took a step back. "No." Kale stood slowly. The fire burned through his veins now, untamed and unyielding. He climbed onto Umbra's back, his hands steady, his heartbeat one with the dragon beneath him. Dne was still speaking, still saying something, still fearing him. But Kale didn't care. "Burn him," he whispered, and Umbra obeyed. The fire that erupted swallowed everything. Nini screamed. The balcony collapsed. The entire castle shook with the force of it, and when the flames cleared, there was nothing left. The war's end. The battle was over before dawn. The rebellion stormed the palace, cutting down the last of Dne's forces. The remaining dragons, freed from their shackles, fled into the skies. Kale stood at the castle's ruins, his cloak tattered, his body battered, his dragon at his side. Lara approached slowly. "It's over?" she said. Kale exhaled. "Not yet." Lara frowned. "What do you mean?" Kale looked toward the horizon. He had his dragon. Now it was time to build a world worth flying in.